Welcome, Commissioner Kavanagh, and thank you for being here, and please begin.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair, Sarek, and all the members of the Commission. My name is Laura Kavanagh, and I am the Commissioner of the New York City Fire Department. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you the New York City Fire Department's experiences with fires involving lithium-ion batteries and micromobility devices. The New York City Fire Department has been carefully tracking the increase in fires caused by lithium-ion batteries and micromobility devices. These batteries are commonly found in e-bikes, e-scooters, and other devices such as electric skateboards and hoverboards. In New York City, the use of powered mobility devices multiplied dramatically during the pandemic. They have become ubiquitous among delivery workers, fueling around-the-clock convenience the consumers have come to rely upon. The upward trend of fires caused by lithium-ion batteries has had truly devastating effects on New Yorkers. Whereas an injury stemming from a lithium-ion battery was a relatively rare occurrence in 2019, when we saw only a total of 13 such injuries in New York City, by 2022, we experienced 147 of those same injuries. In 2023, we are far outpacing that number with 87 injuries to date. We have already experienced 13 deaths in these incidents this year. We have reached a point of crisis in New York City. Lithium-ion batteries are now a top cause of fatal fires in New York. Lithium-ion battery fires present challenges to firefighters that are substantially different from other types of fires. In addition to what we might consider a traditional fire, these devices go into a process known as thermal runaway. This occurs when an excess of heat is generated within the battery, resulting in an uncontrollable, self-heating status that exceeds the rate at which heat can be safely dissipated. It causes a domino effect within the cells of the battery and creates a truly explosive state, producing an injection of gases, shrapnel, and particulates. Thermal runaway is evident by popping noises and billowing white smoke that is created. This smoke is toxic and highly flammable. A fire in a single lithium-ion battery can easily spread to materials around it. If it is located near other lithium-ion batteries, the process may be repeated, increasing the intensity of that fire. Even when it is not the original cause, the presence of a lithium-ion battery at a fire caused by another source makes fighting that fire significantly more dangerous. Many of the fires that we've experienced in New York City have been intense and high-profile. In one incident, FDNY members responding to an e-bike fire in a Manhattan high-rise were forced to make a rope rescue of 2 individuals via a window on the 20th story of that building. In another, 2 teenagers escaped a lithium-ion battery fire by climbing out of a 4th-story window and shimmying down a drainage pipe. Unfortunately, a neighbor perished in that incident. One of the reasons that these fires are particularly dangerous for residents in apartments is that users tend to leave bikes or other devices by the door to charge. When a fire occurs, it often blocks their sole means of exit and the sole means for the firefighters to get in to rescue them. Another challenging aspect of lithium-ion battery fires is that the danger is not over when the fire is out. The battery is still essentially a box of chemicals, and it is not unusual for it to reignite. Once these batteries are damaged or involved in a fire, they may reignite hours or even days after being initially extinguished. Even a thorough inspection may not predict if or when a battery may reignite, something that we have seen time and time again. I was recently present at a bike repair shop during an inspection, and as members of hazmat removed the batteries, one burst suddenly into flames. Given the unique difficulty with suppressing this type of fire, we dispatch FDNY hazmat units to every lithium-ion battery fire to ensure that the batteries are properly handled. Hazmat has pioneered a procedure to eliminate the threat of damaged batteries. However, as the numbers grow and we experience these fires with greater frequency, it has become a challenge to find ways to dispose of all of them. As more devices appear in our communities, the number of fire incidents has rapidly increased. Other cities across the country have begun seeing these issues as well, and municipalities that are not yet experiencing this phenomenon may be facing similar incidents in the future. The department has observed several factors that contribute to these fires, and we've incorporated this knowledge into outreach pieces and our safety materials. We advise the public not to leave devices unattended while charging them, not to leave a charging device on a couch, a bed, or a pillow, to only use devices that are certified by a qualified testing laboratory, to keep batteries at room temperature and away from anything flammable, to only use the manufacturer's power cords or batteries that are associated with that specific device, and that if a battery overheats or the user notices a change in shape, color, and odor, leaking, or noises, to immediately cease using the device. Our challenge is to ensure the safety of the public and our members, while also recognizing that people depend on these devices for their livelihood and for critical transportation alternatives. Manufacturers and retailers have a responsibility to produce and sell safer products. Delivery app companies that encourage workers to use the devices longer and faster than they were ever intended bear responsibility as well. In New York, Mayor Adams and the City Council have implemented a series of new laws restricting the use and the sale of unregulated devices. As a city and as a department, we are attacking this problem at every level, from the mayor's Charge Safe, Ride Safe action plan to working with state and local representatives, members of Congress, as you saw, industry representatives, testing entities, and an ongoing dialogue and engagement with our partners here at the Consumer Product Safety Commission. We have developed and released new public service announcements and safety materials. We continue amplifying our outreach to the community. These efforts, we know, will be effective over time, but we also know that there are unsafe devices in the hands of our citizens right now, so we are doing everything we can to mitigate those potential dangers. It is absolutely paramount that devices themselves become safer, and that process will depend on many of the people who are here today, including members of the Commission, elected officials, researchers, scientists, and engineers, as well as manufacturers and industry representatives. It is my hope that through collaboration with fire departments and events like today's hearing, the Commission will continue developing expertise and will act to regulate these products and incentivize safer designs. I urge the Commission to adopt a national standard and enforce against manufacturers that fall short of that standard. We've seen that this technology moves very quickly, so regulations need to be forward-looking in order to keep pace. I encourage you to explore standardizing battery safety features, such as tamper-proof casings and mechanisms that automatically shut off when a device is fully charged or becomes overheated. You have tools available that can make a significant difference in this problem, publicizing warnings to manufacturers, issuing recall mandates, and seizing products at the borders that fail to meet CPSC standards. The New York City Fire Department is available to assist you in any way that we can. The FDNY has been advocating for research, development, testing, and evaluation of existing battery technologies, as well as new and emerging technologies. We brought our concerns to the Department of Homeland Security's Science and Technology Directorate, and specifically to their laboratory located in New York City, the National Urban Security Technology Laboratory, or NewSteel. NewSteel recently established a program to support the fire service and other emergency responders in better understanding the public safety impacts of lithium-ion batteries and other new energy advancements. New York Representatives Nydia Velázquez and Richard Torres have introduced legislation to address different aspects of this issue. We have advocated for a holistic approach to this problem at all levels of government, from regulations, standards, policy changes, enforcement actions, education and outreach, and further research and testing. We are also very pleased that we have found a willing and enthusiastic partner in the Consumer Product Safety Commission. I have exchanged ideas and suggestions with Chair Honsarek and members of the Commission, and FDNY fire marshals have worked closely with the CPSC staff. We have had a great working relationship, and we will continue sharing data and evidence from the fires that we are seeing in the field to help CPSC experts learn about these incidents and how these products function. I am deeply appreciative for the time and the attention that the commissioners have given to this issue, and I am grateful for all the other witnesses who are testifying today. Micromobility lithium-ion battery fires have taken a deadly toll on New York City, and they endanger the lives of the first responders who answer the call when they occur. These incidents present a growing danger to member of communities across the country. Working together, I am confident that we can solve this problem, improve the technology and the way people use it, and ultimately save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Much appreciated. We're going to now begin discussion with the other commissioners. Each commissioner is going to have 10 minutes for rounds of questions, multiple rounds of questions if necessary. So I'm going to start and just say, Commissioner Kavanagh, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience with these fires and the ways you've been working to improve safety. Your department has been in the center of the crisis, and I really appreciate, as you mentioned, the collaboration with CPSC staff as investigations to these tragic fires have been carried out. I also want to acknowledge the good work that CPSC field staff has been doing as well. And the agency recently commended a senior product safety investigator for her efforts related to lithium-ion battery investigations in the New York area. And her work and that of her colleagues couldn't have been done without the access and support you and others at FDNY have given to our investigators. The information that they're gathering is critical to our efforts to identify defective products, build a case for recalls, and supplement our knowledge as we're looking to work on safety standards. So again, I thank you for your support and welcome a strengthening of that relationship in order to advance safety. I also want to recognize the letters that you wrote to me last summer and this winter. As you wrote to me in August, the most equitable solution would be for manufacturers to design their devices to be safer rather than simply relying upon customers and delivery workers to bear the burden of mitigating risk. So I heard you then, and I hear you now. And we're going to be certainly talking to other panels about this, but I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying about the needs for mandatory safety standards in electrical systems and e-mobility devices and for replacement batteries and chargers. Can you talk a bit about how mandatory safety standard would improve the safety in the New York area?
Yeah, I would like to speak to that briefly and also hand it over to our Chief Fire Marshal. But we have seen in most of these deadly fires, and certainly in many of them are caused, that they are devices that don't have basic safety standards that we see in most other consumer products that are safe, whether or not they were implemented by the CPSC. So, things like tamper-proof containers, things like automatic shutoffs. We are almost always seeing that one of those things is missing in the investigations when we're looking at the fires that are most deadly. Chief Flynn, add to that.
Sure. As the commissioner said, a lot of these fires, post-fire, we are able to examine what is left of the product, oftentimes not much. And we've worked closely with your investigators who have been a tremendous asset to not only the CPSC, but the fire department, I believe, on a national level as well, to share what information we're able to gather post-fire from these products. Recently, our mayor signed in a local law that takes effect in September, which will require all of these devices that are sold within the city to be certified by UL or a recognized national testing laboratory. We think that's going to go a long way. We are encouraged by that, and we feel that that will make a difference. A lot of these fires that we have are from substandard products, we believe. We're doing that research along with your help. We're sharing that data. We're identifying products. We're trying to find products that seem to be failing more often than others. So yeah, I think the standard that we put in place within the city, if implemented nationally, I think would make a tremendous difference. And also to stress, this is not a New York City problem. I think it gets lost sometimes in talking to other fire departments. If you don't have it now, you will have it in your cities. So recognize that it's coming. So get out ahead of it and understand the dangers of some of these devices.
If I may, I'd like to add one thing to that, which is there are other consumer products that don't have these issues, everything from electric vehicles to the smartphones that we use. And while there's different forms of regulation for those, one of the things that makes us most able to make sure they're safe is we know who the manufacturers are. We know who we can hold accountable either legally, legislatively, or via PR. And so, those very, very rarely have these sort of incidents because these are coming, they're much cheaper devices. They can be manufactured much more easily, and they're coming from all over the world. We don't have that ability to call up, or even to know who most of these manufacturers are, let alone alone to call them up and work with them and put pressure on them to make their devices safer. When one of these bursts into flames, we often don't know where it came from, and there's no one that we can hold accountable. And so I think that makes these sorts of standards from your agency and from the federal perspective much more important in this realm of these devices, where we don't have some of these other tools available that we do in other consumer products.
No, I think it's a really important point. I think in other areas where you do have these large device manufacturers, you know who is doing it. They are large companies that are generally want to have a product that people are going to want to come back and buy, especially when you have the secondary market for batteries and chargers where the products aren't even the original manufacturers. It's hard to track them down. It's hard for us to find them. And if they don't have a presence in the United States, it's hard to hold them accountable. And I was, you touched on this, but I think what we've been seeing on the e-commerce side of things has made it all the more difficult. And do you have any experience as to sort of where some of the devices have been failing or causing fires or coming from, as whether or not those are the ones that, I think you said, sort of the cheap ones that are coming into the country?
So we keep incredibly detailed information about every fire. I think the most important thing to note is because we're responding after a fire, there's often significant damage that makes it even harder to know the type of device, the manufacturer, but our fire marshals do extensive interviews, and we've shared those with your investigators. So we do know in some cases, certain companies, certain types of devices that seem to be failing at much higher rates. And, it does seem that those are, like, as I said before, they are in large part these, secondhand resellers, people saying even that they bought it online and they presumed that meant that it was safe, and it in fact does not. Chief Lynn, is there anything like to add to that?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And within New York City, really our ability lies with the brick and mortar stores to conduct enforcement. We don't really have the ability to limit what products are being shipped to consumers within the city online. We do a robust enforcement with those brick and mortar stores. We've conducted close to 1,000 inspections at these locations, issued over 1,000 violations and summonses at these locations for unsafe practices, many times related to electrical issues that occur with the charging of these devices, and the modification and repair in reckless manner of these devices. So we're very limited in the city as far as boots on the ground. This is an all-inclusive effort from the fire department as well as other city agencies. We've developed several task forces to address this issue. We go out every day not only to conduct enforcement but education. Fire safety education is out there every day trying to educate not just the people that use this for commercial practices, but people who just use it for recreation and commuting. This is not just a delivery driver issue. We've had many fires where people use these just for recreational issues. Unfortunately, we've had children die from these, children that have charged them in their room. We stress the safety issues to the people that have these fires. Don't let your children charge them alone in their room. Understand the danger. We had a fire about a year ago where a child was charging it in his room. The father of the child actually heard the device fail. He could hear the fire, and he reacted immediately. And the fire was so intense that he was unable to get in there and save his child. That's how fast these fires move. And this is new to us. It's not the speed that these fires travel is something we've seen traditionally in incendiary fires, where gasoline pours, where the fire moves very, very quickly. Generally, traditional fires start small and then become large. These fires are large from the start. So that creates unique challenges to our firefighters as well as the residents in the occupancies.
Thank you both. Noting my time, I'm going to turn to my fellow commissioners. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for organizing today's hearing, and thank you in particular to Anna Layton on your staff for the heavy lift of organizing all of this. And of course, thank you to all of our witnesses today on this panel and the ones to come for being here to share your thoughts and experience and expertise. The issue that we're here to learn about today, lithium-ion battery safety, is a challenge CPSC has faced for some time now. And as we've heard and we'll hear from today's witnesses, it's a complicated issue. It involves a hazard pattern that spans across a variety of product categories. And while we're seeing these fires manifest acutely in micromobility devices, including e-bikes and hoverboards, we know that the battery fires can occur in other products as well. So while today's discussion will focus heavily on micromobility, as it should, it's important that we keep a broader view of other product categories to make sure that CPSC and our other federal partners stay ahead of the hazards. Today's testimony and discussions will underscore what we already know intuitively, that this is an issue that implicates not only product design and safety standards, which is CPSC's core area of focus, but also supply chain integrity, counterfeit interdiction, consumer outreach, and education, among other issues. So effectively mitigating against this hazard involves not only CPSC, but a whole of government approach. And that's why I'm glad that we heard today from members of the Senate and the House, and I appreciate the interest from Senator Schumer and Gillibrand and Representative Torres, and I look forward to working with Congress and other stakeholders like the FDNY as we work to address the hazard. So Commissioner Kavanagh and Chief Flynn, thank you for being here. I want to thank you for sharing your expertise. Your department is at the forefront of the fight to improve safety, and I appreciate not only the testimony that you've offered today, but the work that you all do day in and day out to keep your community safe. So I want to start with the question that I think most Americans want to know. Are these batteries safe?
I think that's a great question. I would say right now, if you have one of these in your home, you don't know, and that's pretty scary.
To that end, and I agree, are you comfortable with the status quo? And if not, what else do you want to see from CPSC? Should we proceed to a mandatory standard here?
We definitely believe we should proceed to a mandatory standard. I'd say that both based on the risk we have right now, the rate at which that risk has gone up, the rate at which we've seen manufacturers go around local laws and standards and regulations, and what appears to be rapidly evolving technology. And you noted that in your opening remarks, and I appreciate that because one of the things we've really focused on is the fact that just this technology alone is evolving beyond the regulations. And so I believe we need to go above and beyond and much further today, because we will probably have to meet back here again. I think even as we regulate these, this technology is going to keep sort of pushing the boundary of some of these safety issues, but also that just generally we're moving towards the electrification of many of the devices and things we use. And that's some of the work we're doing with the Department of Homeland Security, is to try to look at those 5, 10, 15-year plans and understand what the other new technologies and what other types of electrification, while they may not present the danger these present today, what they might present in the future.
Okay. To that end, in a recent trip to Arizona, my staff and I learned about a lithium-ion battery in suburban Phoenix. The commission recently announced a recall of hoverboards that were manufactured by the Jetson Electric Bike Company that involved 2 tragic deaths in Hellertown, Pennsylvania, a 10-year-old girl and her 15-year-old sister who died when a hoverboard ignited in their home. So while you touched on this, while New York City features prominently in the discussion about lithium-ion battery safety, we know that these issues aren't limited just to New York. Rural Hellertown and suburban Phoenix showed that the diversity of geography and circumstances under which these fires can occur do in fact vary. So what advice can you offer other fire departments across the country that might not have the resources that FDNY has at its disposal? And in particular, I'm curious, your department dispatches hazmat teams to assist with battery disposal. I'm curious what lessons your hazmat team has learned that you can share, and what advice you might have for smaller departments across the country on how to handle these fires safely.
So it's a great point, and I think one of the things we'd like to reinforce most of all, but also we've reached out to other departments, and I really want to give credit to Chief Flynn and his team that they adopted this early and proactively, which is knowing that these fires are occurring and keeping the data on them. As you've pointed out, we have found this to be an issue in other places, and to the extent that it's not seen as one, we often find that's just not that they're not keeping that data right now. We do have, luckily, much more resources than a lot of smaller departments. And we are actually working with the National Fire Administrator to talk about some of that data sharing. And I think even the commission would say that the data we've shared has been helpful. The type of data about, who is producing the dangerous devices, what circumstances are producing them, are critical for regulating them. So I think, data is one of the key parts of this. And certainly we're, a leader on this, and we're reaching out to other departments, but we're also asking them to reach out to us to see how not only our resources, but our early experience. It's so often true in New York where there's simply more people, right, and more density. We often see things happen first in New York, and we want to be able to get ahead of it before it's as acute of a problem elsewhere, but it certainly already is a problem. And that the same thing is true with hazmat. We're a regional resource. We were on the Hill yesterday talking to much of our congressional delegation, and that's one of the things we were reinforcing is that, we are funded for a reason so that we can be an asset to other departments who aren't as large. And I certainly, as I mentioned in my testimony, one of the things I would flag that we need to work on together is the sheer quantity of these batteries that are being produced and shipped here presents a real problem for disposal at every level. The more there are, the more dangerous they are collectively, and the more of, these various types of mitigation measures we need to have. And even we're finding that the amount of batteries we're finding, there's not enough places to put them.
I appreciate that answer, and I want to end on a note of personal privilege. In June 2021, there was an apartment fire building in Hell's Kitchen at West 50th and 9th Avenue, where my Uncle Steve has lived since the late 70s, and there was significant property damage. The fire spread across 3 floors, but property can be replaced, and thanks to the quick work of the FDNY, the injuries were minor and there were no fatalities. So the professionalism of your department and the bravery of your firefighters is something that we Feldmans know well and personally now. So I want to thank you both for that and for being here today and for your continued commitment to work with CPSC on this issue. Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you for having us. And I'm biased, but I agree with you. Our folks are the best in the world. I'm lucky to work with them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Trumpka?
Thank you. Commissioner Kavanagh, Chief Flynn, thank you so much for being with us today, for your testimony, and for your tremendous frontline leadership on lithium-ion battery fires. I appreciate your point that this is a nationwide issue. It could happen anywhere, but at the same time, it is uniquely and disproportionately harming New York City. And you, your department, and the city have taken solving it into your own hands in a tremendously commendable way, and so I thank you for that. At the same time, you do deserve more help from us. And so I'd like to talk about your solutions, what's working, and how we can further help. So you mentioned that New York City recently passed a series of laws to deal with the problem, and one of those laws requires batteries to be compliant with UL 2849, 2272, or similar standards like that. I appreciate the logic of pointing to standards that exist for the sake of triage as we deal with this problem in the immediate term. And we've also done that. And I think most, if not all, of the witnesses here today seem to be advocating that we should at least adopt those standards as part of a solution. But as we contemplate a more complete fix, there are some additional areas that we may want to consider. So, Commissioner Kavanagh, I know you're seeing hazards caused by illicit repair shops that are opening batteries, mixing and matching cells, repairing those things. When they put it back together, it may pose a risk, but that may not be knowable to someone looking at it. It may look the same. It may even still bear a UL mark that was on the outside container. Do you think it would be useful to include more tamper-resistant solutions to make it harder for consumers to open the batteries and to make it more obvious if someone has opened it up?
Yeah, I do. I think we both need to look at how to make them more tamper-resistant, but also how to tell that they've been tampered with. I think that our marshals have encountered that, our Bureau of Fire Prevention that does a tremendous amount of our enforcement. Often, as you've pointed out, people can do this work and put them back together, and it's not always obvious they've been tampered with, but they're incredibly dangerous at that point. In fact, even a UL certified battery that's been tampered with is then dangerous. So we would definitely welcome both ways to prevent that tampering, but also easier ways for both our experts, but also even the average consumer to be able to tell just from either looking at a battery or a simple way of testing that you could know that battery was unstable or dangerous in some way.
And you've also expressed concern about the mismatch between chargers and batteries. Can you walk us through what a preferred solution for you looks like to that issue?
We would like to see, I think, two things. One is that they're automatic shut off. So that batteries either shut off when they're done charging or when they reach a certain temperature. That's critical. We do see that in a lot of other devices, especially computers and cell phones, and we believe that's very critical. We also want to see the devices that won't charge if they're not with their manufactured issued device. A lot of, again, what we're seeing, there's a term, they say Frankenstein bikes, but bikes that are pieced together, both the battery, the bike, the charger, even parts of the bike they all came from different manufacturers. And again, that substantially increases the risk. It also makes it easier for people to make something that's not compliant by piecing something together. So devices that don't work if they're not with their manufacturer issued device would help significantly in stemming that particular type of device.
And with the automatic shutoff that you mentioned, it's my understanding that good batteries have that type of shutoff in the battery itself, but maybe not necessarily with the charger that comes with it. Should we consider redundancies having that required in both parts of that equation?
Yeah, I think redundancies, from a safety perspective, are always critical. I'd say they're especially critical in these bikes. A lot of what we see, especially when it comes to the delivery worker example, is that these bikes are being used in a way they weren't necessarily manufactured for. So they're being used much longer for more hours and rougher conditions, salted roads, potholes, that kind of thing, which could mean they're also more easily damaged. Again, even a safe device can become damaged through that kind of really rigorous use. And so to us, the more redundancies built in can also help when you're accounting for other uses that might not be the recreational one that the bike was designed for.
And one other thing is that, so cars have check engine lights when, to alert people when there's something that's not properly functioning. Do you believe that it would be useful to have something similar for e-bikes where users would be able to see battery health issues pop up on their handlebars, something like an early warning system so they could take action, or maybe even something that would prevent the bike from operating when that alert would be triggered?
I do. I would defer to the folks who are testifying after me in terms of what would be the most effective metric or even how to do that. But what I would say is what we've discussed here and a couple of the other commissioners have raised, which is, does a consumer, would I tell them right now that the bike in their home is safe? And I can't, right? And that's one of the trickiest things, is there has been both a lack of regulation, so many different manufacturers, lots of people selling secondhand devices, even selling them online where people may not realize that they weren't certified or that they were secondhand. Is right now it's nearly impossible for a consumer to really look at the device in their home unless they're an expert of some kind and know for sure that that's a safe device. And so I think anything that can give them an easy indication of that would be incredibly helpful in the future, so that, in addition to all of the regulation, when we're doing education, there's an easy way for us to say, here's the one thing you do or the one or two things you do, rather, than right now it can be very complicated, right? And we're, especially in New York City where people don't have outdoor space, we're trying to give them 5 or 6 things to do that only mitigate the risk, don't make it go away. So the simpler we can make it, the better, and I think safer it will be.
Yeah, that's a tremendous point, and I think putting information in consumers' hands should maybe be one of the biggest takeaways we have, because we can't look at everybody's battery. But if they can do some assessment themselves, giving them that opportunity, I think would make all of our jobs easier in preventing runaways. One other thing there that, I've heard a number of times that these battery fires are so intense that when you look at it after it causes a fire, there might be nothing left of the battery. It's tough to assess what the product was. The consumer might not remember the exact manufacturer, where, when they bought it, or the battery. Would it be useful if these products had something, or would it be feasible in your experience if these cars had something, if the bikes had something, or the batteries had something like a car VIN number, something that was etched metal that could survive a fire?
I think anything where we could, track back to the manufacturer is helpful. I actually defer to the chief just to talk about the amount of damage they see and what these look like when they actually collect them after a fire.
Yeah, that would be helpful in certain situations. Sometimes that casing is not available to us after a fire, after overhaul. Overhaul is process that firefighters take post-fire to make sure there's no fire extension, make sure that we've been able to get to every area of the occupancy that had fire damage. So it's pretty extensive. When we get there to do the investigation, the amount of damage is extremely extensive. But everything helps. There are times where that would be effective for us. As the commissioner mentioned, a lot of these devices that we're discovering are bought from the secondary marketplace. So the person that owns it doesn't really know it was subjected to before they took possession of it. They don't know where it was purchased from or when, what it was used for. Those are questions that we're asking the consumer. A lot of our information is gathered via investigation, which is very helpful for your investigators as well. You know, we do investigations, we do interviews. It's not solely based on the physical examination of the device, due to the fact that so much damage is caused by these fires.
Thank you. Thank you so much for lending us your expertise today and for your help on this issue and for your continuing work on this going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Boyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Kavanagh and Chief Flynn, for your testimony today. I really appreciate your willingness to work so collaboratively with us. It's really important in advancing the issues. As a New Yorker, I'm from Brooklyn, and my family is now in Rockaway, which, as you know, is home to many firefighters from New York. So I really am grateful for all that you're doing and continue to do. A lot of good questions have already been asked, and I just want to follow up a little bit on something you said, Chief Flynn, about it being, it's not just a New York City issue, and you're on the vanguard for sure. I'm just wondering if you've actually consulted with any of your international counterparts. I'm understanding that there are fires in London as well. They don't seem to be of the same magnitude as in New York, although I would say London and New York always a better the top city, but they are certainly comparable. And I'm just wondering if you have consulted with your international counterparts.
Certainly, not just internationally, but nationally. We actually held a symposium last September, where we invited fire departments from all over the world to attend and to express to them the issue that we're facing here. I think that was attended by over 300 people from all over the world, many from the United States, but others from outside the United States. We've been in touch with London also. London faced this issue as well as the Asian countries well before we really recognized this problem. They were going through this problem. I think the use of these devices started earlier there than we experienced it. So we have been in touch with them regularly, and we actually plan another symposium next year where we actually are expecting thousands of people to attend to share not only what we're experiencing, but what they are experiencing also. And I think a few countries actually adopted that standard, the UL standard, and they did experience a dramatic decrease in these incidents.
Do you have information on what those countries were and what other standards different countries are using?
Well, one I could say was Singapore. We reviewed the Singapore study. They expressed that when they adopted that standard, they experienced a 33% decline in fires caused by the micromobility devices powered by lithium-ion batteries.
Thank you very much. I don't have any additional questions and just want to say thank you again for coming. I do really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Kavanagh. Chief Flynn, really appreciate it. That's going to conclude our first panel. We have a full day afterwards, so thank you again both for your time and for making the trip here today.
Sure. We look forward to working with you on this. It's very important, so thank you for having us.